Welcome to my full workflow video for Adobe Lightroom Classic. For this video I'm using the latest Lightroom Classic CC version 7.4. This time we talk about how we get this photo to this look. I'm gonna show you now how to create this step by step. So let's start. I decided me for one of my favorite shots from my Iceland trip. This is one of the black beaches close to Anastapi. This was shot at sunset. You don't see not very much of the sun, but this doesn't hurt the whole thing. The result will be gorgeous even so. I have to add that this is a HDR image made of 3 exposures. I use the bracketing function for this. HDR because to get sure to capture all the light information. This was all realized with the Nikon D850 at ISO 64 and the Nikon 24-70 VR at f8, and the focal length is 70mm. My first action is always to click on Auto to look how the algorithm would handle this picture or to see what would look like a well-balanced histogram. Just to be honest, I push the editing to the extreme the most time. The histogram is just a nice to know, but only because of the reason the picture will be shown or viewed on a display and not as a printed version on paper. As a print I wouldn't edit my picture so extremely, but okay, this is just a quick justification so you are not surprised, and there's always the opportunity to soft-proof the image. Anyway, as you can see, the histogram of this photo is in the unedited condition very stretched. That means there are very bright highlights and very dark shadows and depths. When I click now on Auto, the image gets useful, the sky becomes more visible and the foreground, these rocks here, become a better drawing. As profile I decided me for the Adobe profile because it just fits. The lighting is well balanced, so I need no flat profile. The white balance stays untouched because there's at the moment no visible color shift or wrong white balance, and I could change it when I'm almost done just to see how a warmer or colder look for the image would work. The exposure is already well set, but I make it a bit darker because I want a moody look of this beach. So I go for plus 0.10. What I want to say is that you should have a kind of concept or a small idea in which direction your editing should go. Of course you can orientate yourself according to the captured mood of light, or you go in the completely different direction and create a very bright and happy look, or you just make small adjustments to only reproduce the reality of this situation. But I, as always, want to dramatize my pictures, and this is why we lower the contrast to get for the moment a flatter image. To get the full details in the clouds I turn down the highlights to -90. Not 100 because I always want to have some room for corrections. To get a brighter and more detailed foreground I amplify the shadows to +50. And to get more drawing in the whole picture I turn down the whites clipping to -40. I love to have a strong black level for strong and differentiated colors, but this time I will go down to -25, so with this value I'm not crushing the black and have still enough drawing in the dark details. We set now the creative and maybe the most decisive part of the basic panel: the clarity, the dehaze function, the vibrance and the saturation. So it's no secret that the clarity slider is an effect slider, which adds or decreases the contrast of the midtones. The impact of the slider is huge, and for my image I will amplify it to +40 for a very strong drawing in the foreground, especially for the rocks here. So the impact of the dehaze is even more huge. It affects the lights, darks, contrast and especially the luminance of the blue. If you use it on the negative level, it adds haze, surprise to the image, and that's it what I want to have. But only a bit, so I go for -5. The vibrance let us adjust the least saturated colors of the image. This means for us that the magenta and purple in the sky will be increased and the blue amount of the light. But I decide me only for a slight adjustment with +20. At the saturation slider we can boost every color with no compromises, but as I said, I want a moody look and no popping colors. So I set it to -10. The jobs in the basic panel are done, and we continue in the tone curve panel. I don't want to go too far, but the tone curve represents all tones of the image. The line starts in the shadows and ends at the highlights. You can make the changes directly in the curve, or you use the sliders here on the bottom, which is much more comfortable because these sliders help you to keep the transitions between the different tones as smooth as possible. The tone curve allows you to make your picture look great and not just good. That sounds very fancy, but is at the most time correct. So let's set the highlights to -20 for even more drawing in the clouds. The light slider is a very effective slider because it almost affects the global light of the image, what you can see here very well in this shot. We set it to -40. The darks we set to -50 for a deep and strong black for our moody look. The critical part are the shadows, because you can lose details if you set them too low. I set it to -35 for a more plastic effect for the depth of the image. And don't panic, we will make some partial adjustments later. So we're getting closer to the final look, and to add a bit more contrast, we change the point curve to medium contrast. We will turn now our attention to the colors. We set the saturation of orange to -10 because for my favor it is a bit too present. For yellow, however, we go to +10. Green -20. The aqua slider goes up to +20, so the water in the far pops a little more. And as always, there's a lot of blue in this kind of picture, so I will set it to -20 for a grayish overall look. And for a more melancholic touch, we set the purple to 10 to set a color touch for the photo. The luminance of the colors are way more interesting for this image because they have much more effect than the saturation. You will see it at the end. The orange will be set on +25, the yellow goes on +35. The grass in the foreground is now much more present than before. We set the green to -25 just to make it darker. We set the aqua on +45 to brighten up the water. And to get the real drama in the sky, I decrease the blue to -65. And look now on the sky, much more dark mood. The purple we set to -45. So to check our effect of the adjustments, I click for on and off, and much better with activated settings. I use no split toning for this image because the result with the camera calibration was already satisfying at the end. In the detail panel, I only bump up the amount of sharpening from the standard value 40 to 50, just for a little more sharpness where the image is actually sufficiently sharp. Some hardware fixes in the next step. I activate the lens correction to remove the natural vignette and to add a more controllable vignette afterwards. And as always, I check the box to remove the chromatic aberrations. In the transformations panel, I always try the offered options. The horizon tilts a little to the right, so to level it right, I use the level transformation, and this works very well, as you can see. So the rest is fine, and we continue to the effects panel and add the post vignette with an amount of -25, and we set the midpoint to 20 to draw the viewer more into the picture. And as you can see, this increases the dark atmosphere very, very well. And now the camera calibration. This will put the finishing touches to our picture. We increase the tint to +5. The hue of the red channel we set to -20, and also the saturation. You see what's happening? The colors are moving more and more towards to a darker mood. -30 for the use of the green channel and +40 for the saturation. The hue of the blue is set on +25 to get even more purple, and the saturation is set on -10. And with that, we are finished with the global adjustments. Now we start with fine-tuning. I want to have the waves of the water becoming more present, especially the aqua-colored part. So I select the adjustment brush and start to draw on the part here. To get sure to leave no gaps, I activate an overlay mask with the O key on Windows and Mac. I change the whites to +30 and the clarity to +40. That's fine so far. I wanna get a little more attention for the background, especially this rock formation here. I start to use the adjustment brush again and set the clarity to +50 and the blacks to -15. The same goes for this area here. Let's paint it over and set blacks to -5 and the clarity to 20. The stones and the washed up driftwood need also more attention because this is the center of the image with a clarity of +15. After that we concentrate us on the foreground. We start in the left with the rocks. After I selected these, I set the clarity to 40 and continue with the grass in the middle. I want to draw the attention of the viewer more to the center of the photo, so I decrease the black level to -35 and the clarity to -15 to soften the grass. And always check that your adjustments make sense by turning them on and off. And the last brush adjustment are these rocks here on the right. The light is falling on them, so I select this part here and add some clarity here. Of course, the sky needs more dramatization, so we select the graduated filter and hold the shift key for the correct horizontal alignment. Let me set the lines correct. To get the full usage of this filter, I pull down the third line. And now we set the contrast to +15, the blacks to -30 and the clarity on +60. The sky is much more present now. And the last step is to put a huge radial filter on the image to emphasize the curves of the light. So I select the radial filter, hold also the shift key for a well-rounded circle and put the center on the cloud gap here and make a big move with my mouse. What I change here are the highlights to -20 and the shadows to +10. That's it, we have pushed this raw file to the limit, what you can see here in the comparison, and used every function of the develop module of Lightroom. It's quite time-eating and you have a lot to consider, but the result is just fantastic. I like the created style a lot and hope some of you too. So I presented to you my flavor and my opinion on how to edit a picture with all its possibilities. Nevertheless, it's up to you. What style do you prefer or what idea do you have? It's a very individual and personal thing, I think, and this is why there is no wrong or right. Go your own way, and the most important, try it. Try every possibility until it matches your notions. We are finished. Tell me what you think of my editing. Visit Lightcolorshadow.com for my best shots of Iceland. There is part 1 and 2 and a gallery update is coming soon. You can subscribe to my channel, follow me on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, and I hope you stay tuned for my next videos. Thank you for watching and until next time. Bye bye.